What's up, guys? Welcome, everyone. I'm Jenna X. I have a super exciting show planned for you today. We have two absolute powerhouses under one roof. I am so completely thrilled. Guys, do me a favor, smash that like. It certainly helps out the algorithm. We are going to dive deep today into the topics of DeFi, decentralization, and DAOs. Towards the second half of the show, I'm going to open it up to you guys. So please, as Santiago and Hugo are talking about all of the things, all of the topics, go ahead and get your questions ready. We're going to try to answer as many as possible. So without further ado, guys, first I'd like to introduce to you Hugo Philion. Hugo is the CEO of Flare and co-founder, and he is absolutely a rock star in this space. I can't believe I have him on today, guys. He has started his career managing portfolios as a hedge fund derivatives manager before pivoting to study machine learning at the University College of London. That's when he met Flare's other co-founder, Dr. Nairi Escher. 2 years later, the two would go on to create Flare, the blockchain for data. Welcome, Hugo. How are you doing today?
Great, thanks. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I am doing absolutely amazing. I'm super excited. And I think that I just read that Flare just turned 3. So happy
Yes.
birthday.
Oh,
Happy
thank you
birthday
very
to
much.
Flare. That is awesome. All right, guys, I am going to also bring up Santiago. Santiago is the manager and co-founder of XAO DAO. You know, the one that I can't stop talking all about. He's also the VP of Research and Development at Syndric Solutions, where he's worked on huge projects like Flare Futures, Nike Crypto Kicks, NCAA NFTs, and he's also a nuclear engineer. So I think that means if this interview goes south, he can build me a bunker. And these days, he is also building blockchain infrastructure at Block Digital Corp and has a certificate in blockchain economics from Wharton and has appeared on Real Vision Crypto. Hey, Santiago, how are you doing today?
Jenna, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. And I love that necklace, by the way. That's a powerhouse right there.
Thank you, the XRP bling. I had to represent. So you two know each other, right?
Yeah. By the
Absolutely.
way, let me just make a public thanks to Hugo. He's been a huge supporter of everything we've done and of the XRP community in general and the Flare community. So I just want to take a moment to thank Hugo for everything he's done so far.
Of course. And of course, Santiago is building XDeFi on Flare. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, we got to get into that. We got to get way more into that. And so you both have a lot in common in that what you're building creates a more decentralized version of XRP. Unfortunately, everyone thinks we are just centralized and we have to break that. So you've been adding features that the XRPL itself has been lacking. But before we dive too deep into that round table discussion, there's a lot of people watching who may be new to Flare or new to the XAO DAO or XRPL. So before we jump in too deep, Hugo, I'm going to come over to you first. If you could just give us the most simple explanation of what Flare is doing and why is it so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So Flare is, in long story short, blockchain for data. And where we're really working hard is to make Flare a complementary layer 1 to assets like XRP, to blockchains like XRP, XRP, Bitcoin, XLM, and other non-smart contract tokens. So other non-smart contract blockchains. We focus very heavily on XRP to start with. And really in the short term, there's an almost infinite number of things you can do with data. Pretty much every use case beyond simple payments is data driven. But in the short term, we're very focused on creating what we call XRPFi. And this would be DeFi with XRP on Flare. So, the way we see it is Flare and XRP ledger are complementary. The Flare is providing a very full DeFi ecosystem for the XRP ledger. Users will be able to essentially move their XRP to Flare through an institutional grade bridge that we call F assets. You'll be able to stake it. You'll be able to use it, stake it to earn rewards, and then use those staking assets in DeFi. Flare essentially unlocks DeFi and decentralized use cases that the XRP doesn't natively support. And so we think it's a kind of symbiotic win. You get the XRP speed of settlement, but with Flare's smart contracts, which gives you really unlocks a lot of potential.
Absolutely. Beautiful explanation. Thank you, Hugo. Santiago, I'm going to jump over to you. Could you briefly tell us what is the XAO DAO, who it's for, and why is it important?
Well, in short, the XAO DAO it's a voice. It's a voice that's been missing from the XRP Ledger community for a long time. So we saw that there was a big problem in a lot of the holders, investors, builders really didn't have a way to express their wishes and build and communicate and connect with one another. So we wanted to solve that problem and create the world's first decentralized autonomous organization on the XRP Ledger under the Wyoming DAO framework. So we're super excited to use the tech stack of the XRP Ledger and the Flare network, which we'll talk about today. But yeah, it's really about giving our community a voice so that we have a say in the direction of the ledger and the value of the network.
Awesome. And there has been so much news right now, everywhere you turn, about Flare. I just saw this week, and I want to bring this up, Hugo, and show you this if I can present. Okay. We have crypto.com, and also I believe it's Uphold, have announced that they will be leveraging Flare networks to restake XRP. That is completely huge. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how it's going to work out, Hugo?
Yeah, sure. So, for those that haven't been following Flare maybe that closely, Flare is layer one, smart contracts, data, native data protocols. And that allows you to build applications onto the network. One of the applications that's being built is called Fireite. Fireite is a staking platform on Flare, principally for XRP, but possibly later for other non-smart contract assets like XLM and Bitcoin. But focusing again on XRP first. And Fireite is a partnership. Really, we put out what we call a request for proposals for someone to build a really innovative way to stake XRP on Flare. And one of the partner that we found to build that is a group called Centura. They are effectively an institutional DeFi investor managing money on behalf of a lot of entities. And Fireite is going to allow people to stake their XRP to get yield on that XRP and also receive what's known as a staked liquid staking token, which then lets you do more whilst your XRP is staked. So the liquid staking token is a representation of your staked XRP. And once you have that liquid staking token, you can take it to a DeFi protocol. You can sell it. Not sure why you would want to, because you'd be selling your claim on XRP, but you can use it as collateral to borrow. And you may be able to use it as collateral in things like perps protocols to be able to effectively use your underlying asset to take additional or different risks. And the staking protocol Fireite is very, very innovative. There's a number of staking protocols out there in the market, such as EigenLayer and Symbiotic. And they pioneered a market for effectively staking for security. So staking one asset to secure a different network. And this has been, a reasonably sizable market, but probably tapped out in terms of how much capacity financially it can take these days. So whilst there is an element within the Fireite protocol of being able to use XRP to secure another network, we've also been working with Fireite on effectively financial services that look a lot like staking, i.e. they have the same or similar risks as staking, but they're much more direct financial services. So things like insurance, things like providing liquidity for real world asset trading on chain. These are very low risk financial activities. They provide real yield, and they allow people to effectively lock up their XRP with effectively the same risk as staking or a similar risk as staking and get a yield off the back of that. And that's real yield, not just fictitious yield. And that's quite nice. So that's Fireite. And Vivo Power are a XRP treasury company, the first and very, very legitimate. I've seen a few announcements that I think are from other treasury companies, not Vivo Power, that look a bit spurious. I think there's a big market for this at the moment. But Vivo Power is a very legitimate company run by legitimate people. And they are they were the first XRP treasury company to announce, and they've formed a partnership with Flare around this staking protocol. And Uphold have also announced that they will be allowing their users to stake their XRP through Fireite on Flare. And Crypto.com, talk in their press release about how Vivo Power will be able to offer the staking to their shareholders, or be able to allow their shareholders to benefit from staking on Flare through Fireite through the Crypto.com platform.
This is huge. This is exciting news. And I feel like this is just kind of the beginning. I know you probably can't say too much more, but pretty exciting stuff. I'm going to pass it. This question's for both of you guys. Do you think that XRP's centralized perception will help or hurt its entry into DeFi? Santiago, I'm going to pass it to you first.
Well, I think it's important to define decentralization for a lot of people. The way I view it, and what's important most to me, is control of my private keys, and that transactions can make forward progress without some intermediary or some counterparty being able to kind of decide if they want to reverse that transaction or freeze it, suspend it. And so the XRP ledger, in my personal opinion, at a technical level, is highly decentralized. It's sufficiently decentralized for the purposes of what we're all trying to do here, which is to create kind of peer-to-peer systems. So I think that for DeFi in itself, the thing that XRP ledger has been lacking for a long time is a way for people to put their XRP to work. Vast majority of XRP holders are just holders. And it's a large untapped community and a large untapped resource. So I think that the time is right, and I'm excited to see Hugo and his team build out kind of the spearhead for that.
Thank you, Santiago. Hugo, I'm going to pass it to you. What are your thoughts on that? Do you feel that the XRP centralized perception will help or hurt its entry into DeFi?
So I think I'm agnostic on that question, meaning first of all, XRP is not centralized. It's very clear. There's different degrees of decentralization. Some people claim more decentralization than other networks. If you look at the majority of the DeFi networks out there, I would say they are no more decentralized than the XRP ledger. Even if you take Bitcoin, sure, it has a hashing algorithm and these kind of things, but you do only have a few small centers where that can only be done. The hurdle for decentralization for Bitcoin is ownership of physical equipment, which is actually quite a high hurdle because you have a returns to scale in Bitcoin mining. That means that really you only make money if you own a ton of equipment. And only a few people can do that. So with regards to the centralization aspect, in reality, is like basically a bit of mental masturbation. So I kind of I don't really think about it or care. What I would say is that what we know is that a very large number of XRP holders hold their tokens through centralized entities, like exchanges and institutions. Now that's a problem for DeFi, which is why we've been, that's a problem for DeFi in that your user base that actually hold the XRP themselves is relatively, as a percentage of the XRP holder base, relatively small. And that is why we've been working with Fireite, with our DeFi protocols, to effectively offer these services to institutions. Like that's our market. That's where most of the XRP is. That's why you're seeing Vivo Power, Uphold and Crypto.com make announcements about Flare. Our strategy is to go to institutions. Of course, we're retail friendly. In fact, we've been working really, really hard to make the flows of getting your XRP onto Flare easy, and then the flows of being able to use DeFi on Flare as easy as possible. We have a new wallet called Luminite, which means you don't even need a private key. And of course, we have some great wallets like Bifrost. We have Wallet Connect. We have a Flare portal. All these things help people use the network. But ultimately, where the bulk of the XRP value sits is with centralized institutions. And that's kind of our biggest strategy these days.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Hugo and Santiago, I found something on the internet and I would like you to take a look at this. Can you tell me if what I'm seeing in this picture is accurate? Guys, I'm not a developer. I do not identify as a developer or act like I know everything. I am a simple, normal person trying to learn. But the very first column here is what I'm really interested in. I think a community member made this where it says, lock your XRP in your own wallet on the XRPL. 2, Flare State Connector observes the lock. 3, generates the proof. 4, XRP is minted on Flare. Is that accurate of how things work?
No.
No? Darn.
It can't be. Sorry.
Okay.
It's not bad, but it's not quite accurate. So you don't lock the XRP in your own wallet.
Okay.
We couldn't. You couldn't build a system where that happened. What you do is you send your XRP to an entity that has put up capital on Flare. And that is called an agent, and they've put up more capital than the value of your XRP. So if they have 100 XRP that is sent to them, they have put up $300 worth of. If they have $100 worth of XRP that is sent to them, they've put up $300 worth of capital. This basically means that if they steal that XRP and exit the system, they've lost $200. And that's effectively the premise of them not being able to run away with the money. So you send them your XRP, then Flare's data protocols observe that has happened. Then you receive FXRP in the wallet that you used, the address you used when you sent the XRP to that agent. So that it's relatively simple, but we'll make the flow very simple in an application.
Okay, because I think I took that down just so nobody was misleading by that, but thank you for clarifying. Where I was going with that was because, of course, we have Santiago here from the XAO DAO, and I'm just curious. I'm curious of how XAO DAO members might be able to benefit from F assets. I'm going to let either of you take that away. Santiago, if you would like to go first.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, membership in the XAO DAO is obtained by XRP. So as an XRP holder, you purchase a membership through a fee. It's a $10 denominated fee, but it's payable in XRP. So what that ultimately will result in is, if we get to the membership numbers we expect, is a fairly large treasury of XRP that will be in the control of the XAO DAO. This is not the same XRP as a user's wallet. So the XAO DAO doesn't take your XRP or take control of your wallet. I'm just simply referring to the $10 worth of XRP that you use for your membership fee. Now, the next question then is, well, what is the XAO DAO going to do with that XRP? You could let it sit idle, but as we've just discussed, that's a waste of capital, and there are better purposes. And we have a responsibility as managers for the DAO to ensure that users' funds and ownership in that DAO is applied as effectively and securely as possible. And if we kind of step back a little bit to the history of crypto, it was really about eliminating unnecessary intermediaries, right? It's about lowering your counterparty risk and making sure that you can transact at a peer-to-peer level. So from our perspective, FXRP is a perfect solution for applying a treasury where you want to minimize the risks to your membership, right? You can take that FXRP As Hugo pointed out, you can stake it and earn yield on behalf of your members. And that would apply for any future assets that the DAO intends to purchase, invest in, et cetera, whether it's BTC or XLM or any other F asset that's available. Again, it's another investment option that gives our membership value. So for us, it's a no-brainer. We've seen a lot of failures in the industry, both at the DeFi level and at the DAO level, where the counterparty risk was very high. User funds were diverted or stolen. There was very little transparency. So from our perspective, have everything on chain, having agents being accountable with collateral. All of these are things that we should all be expecting. There really is no better bar. And I frankly think that in investment decisions that don't meet this threshold probably have an unacceptable level of risk for a huge body like a DAO. So we're super excited to be able to participate. And we are also working with exchanges because a vast majority of our membership holds their XRP with exchanges. So it's going to be very important that the user experience and the optionality of either having your XRP in self-custody or having an exchange hold it still lets you take the benefit of FXRP and F assets.
Thank you, Santiago. Hugo, do you have anything to add to that?
Absolutely. So Santiago mentioned that the XAO DAO will have a sizable treasury. And, you know, I mentioned that one of the ways to get yield on that treasury would be to stake it in Fireite, which is a great way to do it. But there's another way to get very simple yield as well, using XRP. So you would convert it to FXRP on Flare, and you would deposit it in a collateralized debt stablecoin protocol, which is being built. So it allows you to deposit, let's say, $2 of XRP to get, let's say, $1.2, $1.5 of stablecoin out. And this then, you then have a stablecoin, which is collateralized entirely by XRP. And then you can lend out that stablecoin, you know, against other assets. It obviously has risk of liquidation and fluctuations of prices, but XRP is extremely liquid. And so therefore, you know, you should be able to get a reasonable amount of leverage on it. And that should allow you to get, you know, some yield on an asset that currently does not have yield. And, you know, to give you some examples, stablecoin yields are currently hovering between 8 and 20%, depending on the protocol.
Wow.
So, you know, being able to lend out stablecoins to get a reasonable yield, to me, seems like a good way to relatively safely, because you can over collateralize quite heavily, effectively lend out your XRP as a stablecoin. So I think that's another way that you could derive, of course, yield from XRP. And that's without getting into PERPS protocols and liquidity providing and all that kind of stuff, because that's very, like, that then takes on a level of risk that probably is beyond the level of risk a treasury would want to take.
Okay. Now, to be clear, Santiago, you wouldn't just be able to decide to do this or make this decision. It would have to come in the form of a proposal for everyone, like, hey, we're not using our treasury. Let's go ahead and stake it right here in Fireite. Is that how that would work?
Yeah, so our operating agreement, which is, as I mentioned earlier, an LLC structure under the laws of the state of Wyoming, in it has, as a manager-managed LLC, we as managers, Fabio and I, we have certain authorities for, you know, paying overhead and expenses, et cetera. But when it comes to the treasury and the assets of the LLC and the DAO, all of that is done through proposals. So any member can, you know, put a proposal forth and say, hey, we'd like to take 50% of the XAO DAO treasury, apply it to F assets, apply it to collateralizing stablecoins, whatever it is, the membership decides. And that's very important because in that way, we collectively assume that risk as a majority. And the decision isn't made unilaterally by one or two people, as you know, has been the case in a lot of other DeFi projects that have ended disastrously. And I'll just add one little note on that stablecoin concept. Many algorithmic stablecoins in the past have failed because the counterparties could not honor redemptions. But the structure that's offered by the F asset system it precludes that, because if there's a huge amount of volatility or redemptions, the agents are responsible in an ongoing way, an algorithmic way, to meet those obligations. So it's as secure counterparty risk-free a stablecoin setup as you could hope for. So we're looking forward to participating in those yields, and I personally will be putting forth proposals to the community for engaging in both F assets, staking, and stablecoins.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Okay, so I want to jump over. There's a question from the audience I was actually hoping someone would ask that really ties into what we're talking about right now. So I'm going to pop that up here, and either one of you can take it. Since XAO DAO voting power is based off of my XRP balance, but the bulk of my XRP will likely be minted as FXRP most of the time, will my FXRP still be counted towards my voting power in the DAO? I love that question.
That's a good question. And honestly, I don't have the answer to it. But what I can say is that we have a very close working relationship with the Flare team. And these are one of it's just a technical issue that we have to just figure out how to properly account for FXRP that's not in the user's wallet. Because the way by which we create governance on the XAO DAO is we do a scan of the XRP ledger. And through that scan, we determine the proportion of your voting power and the proportion of profits and losses in the DAO. So what we'll do in this case is similar to what we do with exchanges. Scanning the XRP ledger doesn't let us know how much XRP our users have on an exchange. So we have to work directly with the exchange to make that determination and then create the proper amount of governance tokens for the member. The F asset system is essentially, I look at it as kind of like a decentralized repository, a custody for the exchange. So I don't see that as more than just a technical issue, but that would be our goal, to make sure that
I can tell you how to, really simply. So the XRP ledger address that is associated with the XAO DAO can simply send a memo transaction that specifies a Flare address where they hold their FXRP. Then you can have a very simple smart contract on Flare that proves that memo transaction and takes the sum of the XRP held on the XRP ledger plus the FXRP held on Flare and apportions them a power within the DAO. So not hard to achieve, and using Flare's data protocols and smart contracts to do it without any human in the loop.
I think the tricky part, Hugo, is going to be how we then take that information, but break it down to each individual member. Because
depending on what their address is, you can do it per address.
Yep. No, it's so again, I think we're going to have a solution, and that's on our roadmap to implement. Oh yeah, for sure. Because I'm going to be one of those members.
I'm excited about that. Guys, we are uniting. This is amazing. I love this. We could work together. That sounds like a really hard.
You could even use Flare's data capabilities to add people from other networks to your DAO, like Stellar or Bitcoin, or whichever network you want, depending on what asset they're holding where. Because that gives you the ability to account the balances held at whatever address on whatever chain the Flare is connected to.
Wow, that's a good idea.
I love this. This is great. I just got so excited because a lot of us were wondering, are we gonna have to put our XRP here and just leave it in the DAO? But we want to stake it. So this is awesome to hear. I think I speak on behalf of a lot of the community that we're pretty thrilled about that response.
I just one quick mention.
Go for it.
The XAO DAO is already utilizing Flare network technology. As I mentioned earlier, our membership fee is $10, but that's denominated in dollars, but it's payable in XRP. So as the price of XRP floats, you need to make a determination of how many XRP is required when you sign up for your membership. You know, if it's $2.50 per XRP, you would need 4 to have your membership. So we decided to use a decentralized oracle, which is the FTSO system of the Flare network, to make that ongoing determination. So we're already tying that infrastructure.
I love that.
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, guys, I just want to shout out everyone in the audience right now. We have so many of you tuning in. Thank you so much. Go ahead, keep spitting out your questions. I appreciate it. We all do. Thank you for all the support and love down there. That is so wonderful to see. Okay, so you just answered my question of how Flare will be used within the XAO DAO, but can the DAO build its own DeFi products?
Yeah, actually, honestly, nothing is off the table. It's really up to the imagination of our membership to decide the kinds of proposals they want to submit. And then, you know, they have to engage with the community and get enough consensus. And then if a vote is passed and ratified, that's the direction we'll go in. So I encourage people who have good ideas and want to see new and interesting ways of using the tech stack to put forth their proposals and engage. I'm super excited to see what people come up with. And I'm going to be a supporter of those ideas that I think are most effective. So if there are opportunities to engage in investments that are other than what's offered by the market now, the DAO could build them. We intend to support a lot of developers as well through a combination of grants and direct investments, sort of like a decentralized venture capital system. And in that, there's opportunity, I think, for developers to build infrastructure similar to what you were just referring to. So we're encouraging it and we'll support it.
Beautiful.
What about like a mutual, like an old-fashioned mutual society? Because if the treasury stakes the XRP in Fireite, the treasury that will then receive staked XRP, which is a token that is effectively one-to-one bound with XRP. You could potentially use that staked XRP to lend out to DAO members who have done a KYC process in the real world and all that kind of stuff, and have like have a credit rating, and you could collate all this information on chain somehow. I think there's ways that we could think about it and talk to you about it, and you could lend to them on chain to a provable DAO member who's sort of provably known through a smart contract where, if they miss a payment, the loan is, called in or whatever like that. So I think it could be quite, I think there could be some fun things you could do with the treasury balance that sort of becomes like an old-fashioned mutual.
Okay.
And this is why I was so excited to talk with Hugo. He and I haven't discussed this at all. So I'm hearing this first time, just like everybody else. And it's super exciting because this is exactly the kind of things that I was hoping for. Lending and borrowing through the DAO itself. That's amazing. And that's what this is all about, is peer-to-peer community systems that we can support each other and do so in as a risk-free way as possible. So that's awesome. So you guys can count on the fact that Hugo and I will be continuing this discussion offline.
I love seeing the live brainstorming going on. I'm getting super excited from it. So I do want to spin this the other way. We've talked about how XAO DAO or XRPL members can benefit using Flare, but how can the Flare community benefit from the XAO DAO?
Definitely a question from Santiago.
Yeah, so I would say that there's a significant domain overlap. One of the things that brought me to Flare in the first place was the way in which the initial distribution was bootstrapped. That was a very, it was probably the most unique way that a network has kind of launched. Distribution is a really difficult problem, and early XRP holders were the first beneficiaries of Flare. So I think there's a huge overlap in the communities, and that's why I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for cross-chain collaboration. So the DAO, by the way, the XAO DAO is kind of layer one agnostic, right? We only our membership fees and treasuries are in XRP, but our investments, our engagements is going to be cross-chain. The future is cross-chain, and it's interoperable. And so we're going to be looking for as many partnerships with other networks and builders as possible. Eventually, we do intend to launch a XAO Hub, which is an application dedicated specifically to connecting individuals from various networks that have goods and needs for goods and services. You might need a marketing person or a venture capitalist or a developer. And there's really no reason to just make that solely for XRP, the XRP ledger. So Flare Network's going to be on that list, and it's very close to the top.
So it would be like a Fiverr, but way cooler.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I love that. I love that. I think that's a way for everyone to be able to support each other, make money, and show off their portfolios. I love that idea. I want to touch back on Santiago. So the XAO DAO obviously utilizes both XRPL mainnet and the XRPL EVM sidechain. What technical challenges did you face when you were building the DAO across these two environments? And how does this dual approach enhance decentralization?
Yeah, so governance is the first issue that's tricky. Our NFTs for membership are minted on XRP Ledger mainnet, but governance is calculated and determined on the EVM sidechain. So the first thing is to make sure that that's done in a as transparent and fair way in accordance with our rules, our operating agreement. So that was the first challenge, is to make sure that we accurately reflect each of the members in proportion to the XRP that they have in their wallets. The second challenge was to make sure that we didn't drown out voices from a few large whales. So we have programmatic caps that kick in when the amount of XRP in a wallet exceeds a ratio to the total, which is it's kind of a long-winded way of saying that your voting power is capped so that your voice doesn't drown out everyone else. That was a little challenging, and that's something that's probably subject to change as we go forward. If the community decides that they want to relax that or make it tighter, that's within the purview. So those things had to be expressed technically, and the XRPL EVM sidechain is a fairly new release, but it does use Solidity and the smart contract, the same smart contracts that are used on Ethereum and other EVM sidechains, and even on Flare Network uses the EVM. So our development has a lot of experience. We built on the Flare Network on the EVM sidechain, and on the Flare Network, and now on the XRPL EVM sidechain. So that, from a technical perspective, is not that difficult. Now, in the future, calculating profits and losses for the membership, that's another challenge, because then you have to do essentially automated and batch payments. So at the end of year, if there's a large profit that's distributing out to all the members, you have to efficiently distribute those profits using the best possible technology. And that includes needing good oracles, good state connectors, good logic. So all of that tech stack is something in our wheelhouse and that we're capable of doing.
Awesome. Hugo, I want to pass it over to you, because we like to talk a lot about data provision with Flare and everything, and we're on the subject of DAOs. What steps is Flare taking to ensure broad community participation in data provision, especially for smaller stakeholders? And also, does Flare have a DAO?
Flare, so Flare is in some ways a DAO. It's not a formal DAO, but as in it's not set up in a jurisdiction and things like that. But we have governance, which many people, most of the network, I would assume, has partaken in at some point or another. Sometimes that governance has been contentious, but ultimately we can't make big changes on the network without a governance vote, and certainly we cannot make tokenomic changes without a governance vote, and that is absolutely critical. A few things like an EVM version upgrade, that goes through from the validators, not necessarily with a governance vote, but like big changes go through governance. So think of Flare a bit like a DAO in that way. And with regards to data provision, I mean, the way that works is, again, democratic. It's not a DAO, but it's democratic in that you delegate your Flare has validators. Each validator also runs the data provision. they contribute to two protocols, one called the Flare Time Series Oracle and one called the Flare Data Connector. Each validator, and I definitely think XAO should run a Flare validator, but it's a good way to put your treasury to use, assuming you end up with some Flare treasury, that is. But ultimately, people delegate to the data provider of their choice and stake to the validator of their choice. They can delegate to various different ones and stake to various different ones, but ultimately they're giving their power to the validators and data providers. And of course, the validators and data providers are the same entities, but you can stake to one validator and delegate your tokens to a data provider that is a different validator. So, but ultimately, it nets out that everyone, like the only power vested in the network does not come from Flare, does not come from the foundation. It comes from your tokens being delegated or staked.
Okay.
Just one little side point on that. When we were building our governance structure, we actually looked at how Flare did their governance in terms of their proposals and proportionment. I think it's super interesting where if we had use of the state connector to observe certain events on other chains, that we could extend the DAO and its scope to a lot more interesting things. And also running infrastructure is another thing that, as Hugo just mentioned, would be very beneficial for the DAO, especially if it can earn you yield. So if you're providing services like FTSO services, validation services, security services, those things are valuable and they'll bring value to our community. So I'm hoping people are paying attention and put forth those proposals.
Yeah, I love the idea of Flare being a hub for like a multi-network DAO.
I love this back and forth. This is awesome. So many good ideas coming out of this. Hugo, I want to kind of shift this a little bit. A lot of the community has been talking about a post that you made. You had commented a couple of weeks ago about a stablecoin backed by XRP. Can you tell us any more about that?
Yeah, so in the Ethereum ecosystem, you have what used to be called Maker and I think is now called Sky. I could be wrong. Could be, I don't know. Someone rebranded. I think they're called Sky. But ultimately, originally that let you take Ethereum to collateralize a stable coin. And ultimately, what that means is, let's say you want $1 of stablecoin. When you put $1.50 of Ethereum value up, and that allows you to mint $1 of what's known as DAI. Now, this has been a good thing for the Ethereum ecosystem, and it's not possible within the XRP ledger because you don't have an oracle and you don't have smart contracts to enable liquidations. So on Flare, with FXRP, with our oracles, and with our smart contracts to liquidate people who either don't top up or don't pay back their stable coins in time, because of course XRP is a more volatile asset than the dollar. Obviously, but you would put in, let's say, $2 of XRP, you would get, let's say, $1.5 of stablecoin, and provided you stayed within a safety threshold, meaning, let's say, you stayed above $1.7 of XRP value, you would not be liquidated. In the case of getting liquidated, you would either have to put the dollar stablecoin back to the contract to receive your XRP back, or you would have to just top up with some FXRP. To me, this is a great use case for XRP. It takes an asset that people want to be long, want to remain long, but lets them get effectively $1 out and use that dollar to get yield. Either to, but probably the best place to put that, assuming you want to remain long XRP and you don't want to have to get dollars from somewhere else to pay it back at another point in time, is probably just to lend those dollars out for a yield. And that allows you effectively to transform your dollars into a yielding asset. So your XRP into a yielding asset. And to me, that's like a really nice, simple use case. And that's called collateralized debt protocol. And I'm aware of one being built on Flare.
Wow. Okay, awesome. Thank you for answering that question. I'm going to pop one up from the community, and then I actually have a special video question from one of our community members. First, this is from T. Would XAO and Flare Network integrate Flare Foundation open source AI into health management DAO with all privacy and security measures in Web3 and Web2? Hope this makes sense. Thank you. Either of you want to take that one?
Well, it's interesting that someone has asked that, and it's nothing to do with XAO DAO at the moment. But open source AI is like open source AI exists, like nothing to do with Flare. But I'm certainly aware of a project building AI, or that will be building AI directly onto the Flare network. So we'll be using Flare for the effectively the management of large language models. So that could be a really interesting angle. But other than that, I'll let Santiago chime in, but it's a slightly left field question.
Well, I would say that, again, proposals are subject to approval by the community, and these kinds of ideas we encourage. So if you think this is an exciting proposal and you think that there are merits, write it down, get into the weeds. I would also say that AI and decentralized protocols for managing those compute resources is going to be an essential component of the future, because a lot of AI companies are kind of hoarding a lot of that compute. And it would be very beneficial for community members to have access to open source AI, especially as data privacy issues, and healthcare has those data privacy issues. So there's a lot of domain overlap there, and there's a lot of problems there. I think we need to get to decentralized identity management. We need to get to data enclaves where people kind of are self-custodians of their own health data. And we need to bring value back to people who contribute to AI protocols, because we all in some way contributed to these AIs in the tokens that they use to ingest and train the models, but we're not beneficiaries of that value. All the value is accruing to a few centralized actors. So any kind of AI initiatives that accrue value to the people who contributed to that data, I would support.
Okay, thank you. All right, guys, I am going to switch this over. Please let me know if you can hear.
Hey, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. It's just an honor, a privilege to be here with Santiago and to also be here with Hugo Philion, obviously also with Jenna. And I want to thank her for giving me the opportunity to ask 2 questions to Hugo. And before I'm going to do that, just real quick, I've been in this space since day 1 for Flare. I've been there since I've read the first white paper, and just ever since that time, I've just been with Flare and just seeing what is happening with Flare, seeing the growth, seeing the demand, seeing Hugo Philion also growing throughout the whole process just makes me nothing but proud to see these things unfolding in front of us. So I'm very happy and honored also to be in this position, to be part of the Flare community. So my first question for Hugo Philion is, with the rising demand for Flare obviously being used as collateral for every single F asset, you will have financial institutions ready to earn yield throughout Firelight. You obviously also have retail investors who want to earn yield through Firelight. And then you have exchanges like Uphold who are using Flare's tech to also provide yield. With all of these demand happening for Flare, if it comes to Flare being the collateral for every single F asset, and with that demand driving up for people wanting to earn yield, is that also one of the reasons why the Flare team is releasing 5 billion Flare tokens every single year to keep up with the demand? I just want to know your thoughts around that, with that huge demand coming just only for F assets for XRP. And what are your thoughts actually based on that 5 billion?
So, okay, I'll answer that. So do I Do I think that there is likely to be high demand for Flare? That would be my guess, yes. Can I say more than that without getting myself in trouble? No, I cannot. With regards to the amount that is released, we have two sort of major sources of release of the FLR token. The first is network inflation, which pays effectively for the data and for the network operators. And that is an ever reducing percentage, starting at 5% and reducing each year. So 5 billion to start with, but reducing each year to the point where over the long term, the network inflation will become effectively zero. It will never become zero, but it will get effectively to like 0.01%. So that's the first thing. And we think it makes sense to front load inflation because you're effectively bootstrapping a financial system. People need the token, and people need to be rewarded substantially for participating in an ecosystem early. And that is the same for the other releases of Flare, which is effectively we put aside 20 billion Flare tokens, which is what we call the cross-chain pool. And that is our incentive program. And again, it has a programmatic payout. So it cannot be, this year, it can't be more than 2 billion, for instance. Can't be more than 2 billion Flare. We can't just take all 20 billion and throw it in the market. But it can be assigned to protocols to give them some incentives to attract capital, to attract TVL. So assigned to DEXs, assigned to lending protocols, assigned to stablecoin protocols, to assign to perps protocols to attract TVL and usage, specifically of assets that come from another chain. So earning Flare emissions with Flare, you can do that only by staking or delegating. You cannot earn Flare emissions without a from the cross-chain pool, without a corresponding cross-chain asset. So if you are in a pool that is FXRP versus Flare, like let's say a trading pool or a lending pool, then you may earn on those assets. But that's because there's a cross-chain element, which is the FXRP. So we put aside 20 billion tokens. It's very moderate in how it pays out. It pays out over 20 years. It's very likely that we won't need all 20 years, and there'll probably be an announcement proposal at some point to wind it up and burn the remainder. So, but for the time being, it's very important to have incentives, especially as we come to XRPFi, to bootstrap that ecosystem and to become the dominant player for DeFi, for XRP, for Bitcoin, for XLM, and these kind of tokens.
Thank you so much for that response, Hugo. And I hope that answers your question, King Karan. He was so awesome. He is one of my favorite people to follow in the space and talk to over the years. And he actually got me even more bullish on Flare. So I appreciate him so much. I did he asked me if he could ask you a personal question. I'm like, you know what? Go for it, because let's do it. So we're gonna go ahead with one more.
So my second question for Hugo Philion is, obviously you're a busy man. You're the co-founder of Flare. Flare is part of your life, and it obviously affects your life too, because you're doing a lot of things at the same time. You're making things happen. So I'm just very curious how your daily routine looks like. And it can be anything. It can be like waking up at a certain time, working out, or drinking 5 cups of coffee before you start the day. Is there anything that you do that gives you that boost throughout the whole day, that just makes you just continue throughout the day?
Time for personal things. Okay, a couple of things. I wouldn't say there's any one thing, but I have obsessions. So I got really, really insanely nerdy about espresso not that long ago. I have like an insane grinder with took different burst sets, and I weigh the coffee, and
Wow.
I use a special implement to make sure the coffee is well distributed in the puck, and I know the temperature of the water, and I know the pressure, and I know the pressure profile. Anyway, I got completely nerdy about that. I think I've lost a bit of weight this year, which I'm pleased about. I think exercise has become a major part of my routine. Lifting weights, but not that much. Mostly just doing at least like an hour, hour and a half walking per day. Absolutely wonderful. And then otherwise, I try to play backgammon for about half an hour a day, which just lets my mind relax.
Nice. And there's like an art to that coffee making, to the espresso making. That is so awesome. Now, I bet when you go other places, you're like, no, it's not as good as mine.
I wish I could say that. I'm in Italy at the moment for the summer because it's far too hot in Dubai, and I went to a damn gas station where I had an espresso that was better than the espresso I make, and I was furious. Furious. I'm like, a gas station espresso.
I love it.
Italians know how to do it. That's just you can't
They
get
do.
with all the tech and all the like measurement, you can't get over it. Can't get over art.
Santiago, how do you take your coffee?
I also not as obsessed as Hugo, but I coffee is a big deal in my house, and I like cappuccinos. So I've tried to make it art of making a really good cappuccino. So that's my morning routine for sure.
I love it. Guys, we're almost at an hour. I just want to pass it to each of you. Obviously, we could sit here and talk all day, asking a ton of questions. It would never end. But is there any alpha that we can get, any little nuggets or anything that we didn't cover that you think's related that we should go over? Santiago, I'm going to pass it to you first.
Ooh, that's a good question. Alpha. Yeah, the alpha is the community. It's the listeners. I've been obsessed for a long time in crypto with the technology stack. And I think the technology is important. It's a prerequisite before you do certain things. You need a certain level of just good tech. And I think we're at that point right now. So for me, the alpha is the community. And that's who accrues the value. That's the XRP Ledger community is the #1 community in crypto, in my personal opinion. And I see that as very sympathetic with the Flare community. And I think that we'll be able to mutually benefit, and we're going to do great things. So the alpha, I think, is to just pay attention and participate.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Santiago. Hugo, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Well, I think this conversation has led to potentially some alpha where I think Santiago and I could go away and have a chat about some interesting things that Flare and XAO DAO could do. But I also wanted to just recap a few things that happened this week, or at least one thing. I know everyone's waiting for F-Assets to launch on Flare mainnet. I think there was a tweet that went out today that said that the second audit for F-Assets v1.2 is forthcoming, and that there is an audit competition that will be running starting, I think, the 20th of August, or maybe sooner. I can't remember exactly the date. But that audit competition will be running concurrently with v1.2 happening on Songbird. So there will be some downtime for Songbird, the F-Asset system, not Songbird itself, whilst we upgrade from v1.1 to 1.2. And this is all a necessary element of moving v1.2 onto Flare. And once we launch v1.2 on Flare, then you will have the answer to the when F-Assets, when Fireite, when XRPFi. So that's in process, and 18th of August, great. That's in process, and I'm very glad to announce that that's happening, and that to have shared that with the community so that people can be a bit more comfortable that we're not just sitting on our hands doing nothing. So yeah, there's that, and I think I think in terms of other alpha, I certainly think the institutional partnerships around XRPFi. It's likely to continue. I think there'll be some exciting things there. I think there'll be, one of the things we didn't cover on this call was Flare v2, which is the use of trusted execution environments to enable computation and essentially verifiable computation. And there's so many applications that can come out of that, not least artificial intelligence-based applications, perp-dex-based applications, and a fair few others. And indeed, F-Assets v2 will be TEE-based. So that's quite exciting.
There's so much excitement going on. Guys, we have 546 viewers right now between X and YouTube. I want to thank you guys so much. Thank you to my awesome guests. Thanks, Hugo. Thanks, Santiago, for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know you guys are both working really hard to get a lot of things done right now. So definitely the community, and I really appreciate that. It's amazing to just share all of this excitement and see the Flare and XRP communities come together. I love that. Guys, be sure to go ahead and give Santiago and Hugo a follow. I have all of their links. They are posted below. And huge shout out to my mods who have been holding it down in this chat this whole time. They have been sharing all of the links as well there, and all of the handles. Remember, if you want to learn more about the XAO DAO, don't forget to sign up for the waitlist at xaodao.io. It's coming very, very soon. And guys, don't forget to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button. Your girl's out here doing work. We got 2 powerhouses here today. It has been an epic show. Thank you so much, guys. Enjoy your Friday. Love you. Peace out.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.